So now on to the agenda. So to start us off, we have Gemma Lee from Lergus, the Irish National Contact Point for the Erasmus Plus funding program, here to give us an overview on all the different opportunities within the adult education strand of the program. Then we'll do some breakout rooms to give you all an opportunity to network and share your project ideas and do some peer-to-peer learning. We will have Jim Sheehan from the Social and Health Education Project on hand to share a case study of a successful adult education Erasmus Plus project that his organization has delivered. We will do a Q&A with our trainers, and then we will do a wrap up and talk about the supports available to you all to get started on your Erasmus Plus funding journey. So that is all from me for now. So I'm going to hand over to Gemma.
Thanks, Emily. Were you planning on doing a quick question before I start? Or...
I was, thank you for reminding me. So we're going to just do a quick poll to get a sense of the level of Erasmus Plus experience that we have in the room. So I will bring that up now. We should be seeing that. So just, have you participated in Erasmus Plus project before? Yes or not yet? We'll give people a few seconds just to answer that. Okay. So we've got 22% with yes and 78% not yet. So that's good. So we've got a mix, and hopefully by the end of the session, we will have convinced more of you to go for Erasmus Plus funding.
Excellent. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, it's really interesting for me to know whether I'm working with people who already know what I'm talking about or brand new people or that kind of thing. So thank you for that. So yeah, I think I'm going to have about 30 minutes to run through a very broad overview of all the things that are possible with Erasmus Plus. We'll also throw in a few definitions just so you know exactly what we're talking about and that kind of thing. And as Emily said, any questions, please throw them into the chat and we'll come back to them all later on. I'm not able to talk and read at the same time, but I will certainly catch up on everything afterwards once I finish this presenting. So I suppose the first thing first is, who are we? So Lergus is a national agency that manages a variety of different national and international programs. We work across a bunch of different sectors. So Lergus is the actual organization that I work for. We're a charity organization and we're nationwide. And then the main program that we manage and that I'm talking to you today about is Erasmus Plus. So that's the first, hopefully, confusion settled out, that Lergus is the organization and the program is Erasmus Plus. Some of you will have heard of Erasmus, which is a program that's gone back a good few years, and people often kind of associate it with higher education, with university students traveling abroad and things like that. But Erasmus Plus is this expanded version of it, that it includes a whole variety of sectors across education, training, youth and sport. It was relaunched again in 2021 and runs up until 2027. So that little plus on the end was a big deal when they added it, because it expanded the whole program to include a lot more. So the sectors that are involved in Erasmus Plus, as I said, it's quite broad. What we're here to talk about today is adult education. I'm going to give you the sort of definition that we work with as to how we focus on adult education. But it does also cover vocational education and training, which is that whole piece about the world of work, students doing further education courses, those kinds of things. It also includes schools education, so your primary and secondary schools, also a little bit of early years. And actually my colleagues are working with Emily and the team at the Wheel to do a session on schools education next month, so that's coming up. We also cover youth, and people will have heard of youth exchanges and things like that happening. And as of January, we're going to be doing sport. So that's a new, exciting one that we've never done before. We're all going to be learning together. It's going to be quite a small program to start with, but that's starting in January, and we're currently just hiring the staff to manage that program. But today I'm here to talk about adult education. And so hopefully that's what you were all expecting and all hoping to hear about. So when we talk about adult education in Erasmus Plus, it is incredibly broad, and this is the big piece that I want to kind of push across to all of you that are here today from a variety of organizations I know in the community and voluntary sector, that when we look at adult education, we see it as all kinds of non-vocational learning. So anything that's not to do with, you know, your workplace skills, that kind of thing, basically everything else. So we cover the formal, non-formal and informal sectors. So that could be your women's group that are working on building some crafts and building self-confidence and speaking skills. It could be maybe a disability group that are working on independent living skills. It could be a huge variety of things. It doesn't have to be that kind of typical classroom teacher-student sort of scenario. Anything that you might be doing in that field of community work or community development, if there is somebody learning, then we see that as adult education. So I think that's just a really important piece to keep in your head, really, as we go along, because I think that is a piece that maybe people don't get. They don't see themselves as being a typical educator, and sometimes that kind of puts them off applying. But absolutely, we're happy to see that wide variety of people. So within the Erasmus Plus program, sorry, I've just realized that my slides are in the wrong order. Right, I'll scoot ahead and I'll go back. So from that definition, do you think maybe, are you doing adult education in your organization? Does that make sense? Hopefully these reactions buttons are working on your Teams and or on your Zoom, and you can give me a thumbs up. Does that kind of resonate with people? Yeah, I see a few thumbs coming. Excellent. Okay, we're in the right place. Great. That was my main thing. Let's make sure we have the right people in the room today. Yes, so let me go backwards because I don't know how they got in the wrong order, but that's what happens when I edit things the morning of an event. So I still see a few more thumbs coming up. Okay, this is fabulous. If anyone's not sure if you are, then that's a question to stick in the chat and we'll get back to that later on. Maybe you're not sure if you might fit in a different sector and I can pass you on to my colleagues. So in terms of the kind of priorities of the Erasmus Plus, it works across 4 different priorities. That's for the moment up until 2027. And I have a feeling that most of you are already working on some, if not all, of these priorities. The first one is inclusion and diversity. So, you know, that whole piece that we want to include as many people from as many different walks of life as possible. The next one is the digital transformation. So that's making sure that nobody gets left behind in this kind of digital move that's happening in society, that kind of thing. We also have the environment and the fight against climate change becoming more and more important, I think, every year at the moment. And then this last one that I just find really, really interesting about kind of participation in democratic life, civic engagement, taking part in society. So they're the kind of 4 priorities. So that would be your starting point to see if you had a project idea, does it fit under those priorities to begin with? There's more specific ones in terms of the different sectors, but they're the kind of broad overarching ones. So what can you actually do? We have 2 different projects that I'm going to talk about. We have Key Action 1 and Key Action 2. So they're quite different. So I'll start with Key Action 1 and then I'll move on to the other one. And Key Action 1 is all about the word mobilities is what they use, which always makes me think of a mobility scooter or something. But really what it is, it's about movement. It's about people moving around Europe. So when we look at staff mobilities, there's a few different options there for your staff. So your staff could go off on training courses. These are any training courses that they have identified that would be useful to their role around Europe. They can go for 2 days up to 30 days, although we only cover 10 days of course fees, but maybe they might be doing, you know, there might be a weekend in the middle or whatever, so they can stay for longer. They can also do job shadowing. So that's a really interesting one. If you found a similar organization doing work that's like yours that you'd like to learn a bit more from and spend some time with that organization, you can go and job shadow, or even take that a step further and actually go and teach in another organization abroad. And there could be a kind of a swapping scenario, or there's lots of options within that. But they're your kind of your options that are available for your staff. What we see most of is we see a lot of training courses, and that's often a starting point for people. So they might apply for quite a small, straightforward project where they're sending a handful of their staff off on a training course. Those staff then go, they meet 30 other people from all around Europe. They come back full of ideas, and the following year they decide they want to go and meet someone that they met before and do a job shadow, and suddenly it starts to build into something bigger. But it can be as straightforward as just sending a couple of your staff off on a training course, and we provide the funding for that. This doesn't need to be complicated. So they're the staff options. Now I promised a few definitions, so I've stuck a few definitions in here just that you'll have these when you get the slides later on. But really what I want to highlight here is that staff includes people at all different levels. So it can be the people that are doing the direct teaching or training or tutoring. It can also be somebody at a management level who's overseeing that and maybe wants to have some more insight into some kind of strategic planning or, you know, some other skill that's useful for the organization. Also, what's useful from this definition is that it's professional and voluntary. So I know some of your organizations might rely a lot on volunteers. You might have a very small staff team. So your volunteers can actually take part in these trainings as well. The main thing we'd look for there is some kind of a volunteer agreement or something like that, that we can show proof that, you know, there's a tie back to your organization. This all comes down to the European Commission and a little bit of bureaucracy. So there does need to be a paper trail. But, you know, having a volunteer agreement is generally good practice in the sector anyway. So I think that's just useful to know. So it can be, again, that kind of wide definition of staff. The other potential activity in here that's really interesting is for the learner mobilities. So again, if we're talking about informal and non-formal learning, those learners don't necessarily need to be students in a classroom. They could be the community groups that you work with, different kind of groups that you're working with regularly, and they can go off on mobility. So you can actually organize a trip similar to, maybe you might have heard of youth exchanges happening in the youth sector. That kind of idea that your community group is going to go abroad for a few days to visit with some other groups, to learn from them, to share with them. They can go as a group or they can go as individuals. At the moment, it's all kind of short term. We've heard there will be a long-term opportunity available in 2023 as well. Really, what I think is most useful here is the group. I can see that being really nice to send maybe a small group that you're working with to go abroad to meet with another organization, to share experiences there. What they do when they're abroad is super flexible. They can take part in a training course. They could do some local on the ground volunteering. They could do some work experience. There's lots of opportunities there depending on what you wanted to do. Another definition, as I said, I'm just throwing these in so you can read back on them later on, really. But just to be clear that those learner mobilities are specifically targeted at learners with fewer opportunities or who are low skilled. So if they're the kind of cohorts that you're working with in your communities, this is exactly who we're targeting this for. This is who we want to get involved. And I'll go into the funding piece of it in a minute, but there's loads of supports for those people to try and support them to participate as fully as they can. Yeah, similarly, so I've shown up the definition here of people with fewer opportunities. You can see that it covers all kinds of everything. So it covers economic, social, cultural, migrant issues, disabilities. So it kind of is a catch-all. For you guys know yourselves, the groups that you're working with and the challenges they face. So if you feel that they fit into that category of people with fewer opportunities, then absolutely those learner mobility options are for them. I hate putting up huge big lumps of text, but sometimes it's just useful to have that kind of piece of information there. So a few other opportunities that are also part of this and that are quite interesting. There's one for invited experts. So that's where you have an international experience without having to leave the centre at all, that you actually invite the expert to come to you. So that person comes from abroad into your centre to maybe run a workshop or do some training for your staff or things like that. Where we've seen this being really interesting is sometimes people will send a few staff off to a training course, and then a few months later, they'll bring that invited expert back to their staff team to help them embed that learning into the whole staff team. And it also supports maybe some of the staff who weren't able to travel if they had family commitments or other reasons that they couldn't take off a few days to go abroad, but they're still getting the benefit of that learning from having the expert coming over. So that's a really interesting one as well. The preparatory visits, so that's if you were doing something like a learner mobility and you're sitting here going, Gemma, I'm not taking my whole community group off to France with no, no preparation. So what you can do is you can take 2 or 3 of your staff, you can go over, you can check it all out, you can make sure you're happy with the accommodation and the activities you're going to be doing, even just from the practicalities of figuring out how to get from the airport to the venue and all that kind of stuff without having the whole group with you and that stress. So there's funding there for those prep visits as well. There's also a huge amount of inclusion support available, both to support accompanying people if somebody maybe needs a carer or if you need to have some staff to look after the service users that you work with, but also just kind of practical supports. If there's something that somebody cannot travel without a particular thing being funded, then that can be covered as well. So there's a huge amount of inclusion support built into the program. That's, as we saw, it's one of the key priorities, so it's something that we're all about. And then the last bit that I have there is the hosting trainee teachers. It's not something that we have seen happen yet in Ireland, but I think it's exciting that it's an opportunity. So that kind of is linked to that one that we had on the other slide about training assignments abroad. So that would be where the two organizations would both apply, one to send and one to host, and it's kind of a two-way thing. So there are all the different things you can do in Key Action 1. This is where you can do them. So it's the 27 EU states. We also have 6 other countries that have signed up to the program, which is Iceland, Liechtenstein, North Macedonia, Norway, Serbia, and Turkey. I just flagged there that the UK is unfortunately not an eligible venue, because I know a lot of people would previously have had strong partners in the UK, but unfortunately since Brexit, they're no longer involved. But there's still a huge variety of countries there that you can go to. So yeah, it's exciting, I think, to be able to think that you could travel as far as Turkey or as far north as Iceland with these kind of programs. So what about the money? Because I know that's all really people really want to hear about. That's the best bit of these kind of things. So what is actually funded? So what's funded in this, and I've just highlighted there, the overall budget for this for 2022 was 1.2 million. That's just for adult education, just for Key Action 1 and just in Ireland. So there is a lot of money available to this. And what I can say to you is that in general, if you apply for this funding, you're not competing with each other to get this funding. You're only competing with yourself to get your application over the line, over the quality standards that we have. We have not yet reached a point where we've had to decide who gets the money and who doesn't because of funding limits. So, you know, there really is, and as far as I understand it, that number is going up again for 2023. I think it'll be 1.3 or 4 million. So I'm absolutely encouraging all of you, if this is ringing bells, if this is sounding like it might work for your organization, to consider applying for it. So yeah, so what's covered? So the organization support, that's just kind of a lump sum that your organization gets to give you a hand with the planning and the preparation. There's 2 different amounts. It's between 100 or 350, depending really on kind of how in-depth the planning is. So if you're just sending someone off on a course and everything is arranged for them, you get €100. Whereas if you're setting up a job shadowing and you have to plan a whole scheme of activities and all of that, then you get to 350. So there's a few different amounts there, but basically that's a per participant amount that you get. If you tell us that those participants have fewer opportunities, you automatically get an extra €100 per person. That is just to kind of acknowledge the fact that those people will need some extra support and preparation to take part. So that's for your organization. The travel costs, it's based on a kind of a calculator that we have about how far is the distance from one country to another. So there's an example. A lot of countries would be in that kind of up to 2,000 kilometer radius in Central Europe, and that'd be 275. So it's up to you to just do well and book the flights early and be willing to take that early morning one to get the good benefit out of that, you know. There's also the individual support, so that covers your kind of travel and accommodation, or sorry, your accommodation and food and things like that. I haven't given you those rates because they vary depending on the country and the cost of living in the country and all of that, but generally it's enough to cover it. The course fee, so that's if your staff are taking part in a training course. The preparatory visits, as I said, if you wanted to go in advance and check the place out. So those inclusion supports then, so it's 100% of real costs if you've justified something and if you've said, listen, this person cannot go without this, whatever it is. I know our finance team kind of hate me giving examples because these really are case-by-case basis, but you know, things we've seen is if there's somebody who literally has never traveled abroad before, they don't have a passport, they don't have a suitcase, you know, things like that, that they can't travel without those. But you know your own service users and your own clients, and you know what it is that they need for that support. So that's quite flexible, and it's all about the individuals and what it is they need. There's also some exceptional costs there as well. So people need visas depending on their migration status. And if they have a particularly expensive travel, so if for some reason they need specialized transport due to a disability, if they live on the island and they need to get ferries and boats and buses and all of those things. So there's some flexibilities there as well. So in general, it will cover the majority of your costs. It may not cover exactly 100%, but Jim might have more to say on that later on. But in general, it does cover a lot of what you need. Here's just a quick example of what that could look like. And as you can see, this is to take 5 adult learners abroad with 2 trainers supporting them. They're going to Finland for 4 days. They're traveling a day either side. That's coming out at about just over €9,000. And that's a fairly simple project. So that would cover hopefully most of the costs involved in that journey. Okay, so that's the Key Action 1. So let's see how you're doing now, how you're following me so far. Does that sound like something that might be appealing so far? What do we think? Let's try these reaction buttons again if we can find them. I see a few claps. Okay, excellent. Yeah. Okay, oh, this is good. Like, I think there's amazing opportunities here. But within Key Action 1, it is quite rigid. You have to follow this is what's on offer and this is all that you can do. But what's available is quite flexible in terms of both your staff and your learners. Now, I don't want to completely melt your heads, but just to say there is 2 different kind of routes into Key Action 1. There's a short-term option if you just wanted to do 1 or 2 projects and that's it. There is also a long-term accreditation option where you basically get a kind of a membership card. That means that you can get guaranteed funding every single year once you've got that accreditation. So we don't need to get into any of that today, but just to know that it is there as an option, and we can certainly have those conversations later on. In terms of timelines, the next application deadline for the Key Action 1 projects is in February. So you've got a few months to start thinking about it and start preparing for it. If you were successful in February, your project could start anytime after June. And the next application date for those accreditation ones is not until October. So loads of time to think about that. And in theory, you could do both. You could do 1 short-term project for the next few months, and then you could also start looking at accreditation in the longer term. But as I said, that's a few steps ahead. Right now, we just want to give you the general overview and the general gist. So I said we had 2 different actions I wanted to talk about. The other one is the Key Action 2. This is kind of easier to explain and also more difficult. So basically what this is about is it's partnership projects. It's where you find a partner in some of those other European countries and you work with them to develop a project together. This can be kind of anything you come up with. So maybe you've got some sort of really good way of working, some kind of interesting program that you use in your organization and you want to share it with others and you want to publish a training manual on it. So you find a partner in Germany that's working on a similar thing, you share with them, you pilot it in their organization, you learn from them, they learn from you. At the end of it, you publish this fantastic new training manual and maybe you run a conference to teach everyone else about it and share the learning. That kind of thing. But really, it can be a lot of other things other than that as well. So Key Action 2 can be as big and as complex as you want it to be, or it can just be as straightforward as 2 organizations coming together to share and to learn. So in terms of what's available there's kind of small scale partnerships and there's big cooperation partnerships. The funding can be anything from 30,000 right up to 400,000. And the next deadline for that is in March. Now, different to the Key Action 1, I know I said to you that the funding for those was almost unlimited. For Key Action 2, it is competitive, and we don't always get to fund every project that applies, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's worth giving it a go. I think especially those small-scale partnerships are really accessible for smaller organizations or newer organizations. They're targeted at newcomers, so you even get a few extra points just for being a newcomer because we kind of want to encourage you into the Erasmus Plus community. For small scale, you just need 1 other partner. For the cooperation, the bigger projects, you need 2 other partners. And as I said, they're super flexible in terms of what you can do. I've given a little example here of kind of a nice straightforward 30,000 euro project where there was 2 partners. They both work with a similar kind of cohort of service users, but in different ways. So they were coming together to share skills. They were going to train each other's staff and each other's learners, and then they were going to come up with a kind of a training manual at the end of it and run a kind of a public event in each country to share what they've learned. Really straightforward. They had money there for project management. They had the piece about developing and implementing the training courses. They had some funds there for that awareness campaign that included setting up a website and managing social media pages and things like that. And then their final event. I thought that was just a really nice kind of straightforward small scale partnership. As I said, they can be huge. They can go right up to 400,000 euro, 3-year projects. But I think for people that are starting out, start small. Doesn't need to be hard, doesn't need to be complicated. So that's the Key Action 2. So let's get one more reaction from you here now and see if that one is ringing any bells for anybody. Is that sounding interesting? We definitely got lots of interest from the Key Action 1. So let's see. Oh, there's a few hearts popping up. Okay, yeah. Okay, well, that's great, because I think it really is. It's a lot more flexible than the Key Action 1. It kind of lets you to do what you want and create what you want. But it does include that partnership piece. Now, I have a few slides here on kind of support and things, but I think, Emily, are we doing sort of some of that near the end? So I probably don't need to go into it too much.
Yeah, if you want, you can hold off towards the end if you want to, Gemma.
Cool. Yeah, okay, well, I think that is me then. That is a quick whirlwind summary of everything that's available. I see a few comments that started coming into the chat, so I'll have a look back on them now, but I'll hand over to you ladies in the meantime.
Great, thanks, Gemma. So what we wanted to do now was give everybody an opportunity to kind of network and kind of discuss project ideas and do some peer-to-peer learning in breakout rooms. So I think Christina, my trusty assistant, is going to set up the breakout rooms for me. And I will just put up my screen so we can share what exactly we would like you guys to talk about. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. Yeah, so essentially what we're going to do is go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. We'll have about 3 people in each room. And we just like everybody to chat about the following 3 questions. So first of all, what kind of project ideas do you have for an adult education Erasmus Plus project? What challenges and opportunities do you foresee? And what kind of supports do you think you might need to progress these ideas? If you don't get to all of the questions, that's fine. The main point is really just to get a chance to talk to your peers and see what kind of project ideas you have. And to help you kind of capture your thoughts and ideas, we put together a Menti link, and I'll share that in a moment. So there's just kind of a category for each of those 3 questions. So what we'd like you to do in your breakout rooms is for each room to nominate a note taker so that they can kind of keep track of the things that you talk about and input those ideas into Menti. And so to enable the note taker to also be able to take part in the discussion, once we come back from the breakout rooms, we'll give the note taker 1 or 2 minutes to put those thoughts into Menti so we can have kind of a look at what you guys have talked about in the wider group. Exactly. Okay, yeah, so we've got some good ideas coming in here. Interested in learning how to find a partner, how EU funding differs from other. And then the scrolling thing is messing me up when I'm trying to read it. But funding for people we support, supporting pastors of immigrant families with combating domestic abuse. More than ideas, we discuss the opportunities we could have in applying to Erasmus Plus. Also, any chat around interns through Erasmus Plus. Okay, so maybe that's something that we could address in the Q&A. How we can learn from others' experiences and practice throughout the EU. And maybe some stuff about volunteers. Okay. Can I move on to here? Let's see if anybody. Here we go. Opportunities and challenges. Challenge would be finding a partner and the administrative burden, and we have some resources to help out with that. Increased knowledge and shortage of resources. What reporting is needed. So that's something we could also talk about during the Q&A. Participation, time, and commitment. Yep. And let's just see here. What kind of support do you need to progress these ideas? Administrative support. Okay. A lead person on either side. Yeah. Mobility requirements. Express supports, I think, would be needed for individuals. Not sure yet. Maybe to have more information to feed back to my organization and see what we could do. All right. So we've got some good food for thought here and some things we can address later in the Q&A. This Menti will be open, I think, for another day afterwards, so people can kind of still contribute to it. And like I said, we'll circulate this in the follow-up email so people can kind of have it as a resource. Okay. So thanks so much for getting into that. Really appreciate everybody taking the time to do that. And I think what we're going to do now is go over to Jim Sheehan from SHEP to deliver his case study on their Erasmus Plus adult education project. So Jim, over to you.
Thank you very much, Emily. It sounds very grand to deliver the case study, but I'm really just going to talk to a few talking points for about 7 or 8 minutes, isn't it? And just draw my experience and share that with you. So first of all, a big thank you. Delighted to be asked to share my experience of being involved with Erasmus K1 and K2. So just to start, so I'm with SHEP for short, so Social and Health Education Project. We're down here in Cork, mostly Cork and Munster, and we're mostly in non-formal education, and our focus is on health and well-being using experiential group work, and we're a Section 39 HSE funder group. But so we're we're long established, but almost all our work is non-formal, So if I asked the question, look, what has been my experience like, or what has it been like? I would say 2 words. I would say enriching, and I would say worthwhile. It has been work, undoubtedly, and it's not straightforward, but definitely when I look back on what we've done since 2014, I would say we were very lucky to be involved in it, and I'm very grateful that we've had the chance to participate. And definitely would like us to continue to participate in it over the next number of years. I'd feel an awful loss if there was somehow the project was closed and we couldn't participate, I would say as well that when I started off in 2014, I had really little idea about Erasmus or K1 or whatever it was. And we just started, we took a first step and we got our foot in the door and we kind of built up our experience over time. So that is the truth. You start somewhere and you learn by doing. And that's the best way. Do start off small and work your way up. And my sense is that I actually have a good understanding of it now, but it's taken quite a while. But you don't need to know everything to start. Okay. So in terms of what we've been doing so far, so we started in 2014 actually with the K2 projects. We went off to a contact seminar. So these are quite important events. A contact seminar that was one in Dublin, organised by Lergus, and they assembled people in Dublin interested in the theme of motivation and guidance in adult education. And there was 50 people there from all over Europe. We're there for 2 days, I think, for 3 days. And at the end of it, the idea is they kind of invite people to kind of assemble in groups around themes of interest. And there was a group there that were interested in looking at outreach and guidance, and one from Czech Republic, one from Spain, one from Finland, Slovenia, and ourselves. And we kind of said, yeah, if we could get funding for this idea, we'd love to do this. And that's what happened. The Czech agency said we'd be the lead. They put the application into Czech Republic. We got the funding. And for the following 2 years, we had a lovely exchange. Each country over the 4 years or 2 years organizing a program where the others would visit for 3 days. And like you showcase your stuff while they come. Say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They arrive on the Monday, but for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you're putting on a program, and you might have, we say, 3 or 4 from each of the other countries. Maybe might have 12 people visiting, and you basically support them to learn about what's happening here in Ireland. And then in time, then you go to Spain, you go to Czech Republic, and you go to the other countries. And what we did is we shared out the mobilities amongst our staff and trainers so that as many people as possible on our team could actually participate in at least one event. And it was a really, really important exchange. And I would say the most important thing for me is not what you learn, but the connections you make with people. There's something about the connections that are more important. It's about heart really rather than head for me, And if I think about 2 highlights for me from Erasmus over the last 10 years personally, I would say it was me participating as a participant and going to Berlin for a week to do a course, which was a standout moment in my career, I'd say. And the second one was a K2 one, which was I was one of the participants from this project that went to Slovenia in that project. We went for there for 3 days, and it was marvelous, right? It was just something else. And they will always stand out as special times in my career, right? And they were only possible because of Erasmus. Okay, so we've been involved in 2 K2 projects. The one I spoke about is finished, and we're now currently in one which has the theme of using storytelling as a method for adult education. And we've just last month, we hosted people from Sweden, from Latvia, and from Spain here. So again, we showcased what we do, and we facilitated a program for 3 days to help people understand how we use storytelling in our work and to kind of build connections and to do different things. And it was a really good experience. And I was telling Emily in the break, while you were in the breakout rooms, that it was so beneficial even to ourselves to do that for ourselves as a team, because even some of our newer people didn't realize some of the things that we did, and it's not just about giving, it's about giving and receiving. And then next year, I think 4 of our staff will get a chance to go to Spain, and 4 of our staff will get a chance to go to Sweden, right? So that's a fantastic opportunity for 10 staff next year, right? I mean, it's very hard to get funding for training in our spheres, but like to be able to send 10 people away like that would be that'll be huge, really, in terms of staff morale, motivation. People are already excited about the idea that they're going to go to Mercia, or they're going to go to Sweden, right? So in terms of K1, we started small with K1 in 2014. We put in an application, I think, for 10 mobilities, all training, just to send 10 of our staff and tutors off to different things. We didn't really know what we were doing, to be honest, and it took a while to get into it. But once we found a few good pieces of training, it started to unlock. because we kept sending new people to the same training again and again. That's one of the challenges. It's not easy to find good training in English language out there in Europe, especially with Brexit, with the UK. I'd say half of the training opportunities that we were looking at were in England or Scotland, and now that's gone, which is a big pity. But there are pieces there, definitely. So so typically what we would do is we would either identify a piece of training that we would want to send staff to, and ask people, would you like to go to this, and manage it that way. Sometimes we'd have a little lottery even. Like sometimes there might be 5 people wanted to go, and we might only be able to send 2, but you just do a simple lottery. And then if you might do the following year then for the people who missed out. But we've been able to send almost everybody who's wanted to go to something over the last 8 years. Like almost everybody who's wanted to go has traveled. Okay. So most of them have been just simple, mostly 3-day, 4-day or 5-day training courses, either in England, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, right? Small number of courses. We've never been disappointed. Nobody's ever come back and said that was a waste of time. Some of the courses are more relevant than others, definitely. I would say the one that I did in Berlin, we've actually sent 12 people to over the years. We've actually had to put in some of our own money into that because the Erasmus grant doesn't cover the full cost of the training. But for us in our work, it has been organizationally very important. And has suited us. So we've used Erasmus basically to build up our competence as an organization with a certain way of working, and we've used it. So that's been really beneficial in terms of ourselves. But I would say that one of the key things is morale. I mean, I think we've sent maybe 40 people over the 8-9 years. I mean, it's been fantastic that people feeling a sense of appreciation that they've been included in something. A lot of them are tutors that are not paid staff. They're tutors that are, paid by the hour for the work they do. And to be honest, like they're paid modest monies for the work they do, and they've been involved for years. And to be able to support one person to access a piece of training that they've always wanted to do, and maybe do it with a colleague and have the support of that, like that actually is really, really a great gift. So even if you could only send a few of your tutors abroad over the next couple of years, like it really is something to be cherished. Really, it's an opportunity, definitely, The last thing I would say about the Erasmus is that I feel that Erasmus has helped us as individuals in this project and as an organization to feel that we're European, right? That we're actually part of a European project. And like that's actually really, really important to us, that like we are a European project and we're less insular now than we would have been. We're connecting with European projects and we're thinking about adult education as a European initiative, and we're participating in these things as European citizens. So I never, like if 3 years ago, if you asked me, where's Slovenia? I would have been challenged to tell you where Slovenia was, to be honest, right? But now I know where I visited there, right? Because I know it's over there near Venice. I never met anybody from Slovenia before I visited there, right? That's true. Now I feel I have a sense of the country. I've met lovely people over there. I have a sense of their history, of that we've so much in common. And I feel there's friendships there as well. Like I could pick up the phone out to my equivalent in that project, and I feel I could ask her a question and get some support if I needed it. Like that's not the case for all projects, but like with that case, it feels like that's something important. That there's a European connection, and it's that we're contributing to that European peace building process, which is, I think, more important than ever. So the last thing to say is maybe a few challenges and a few tips. So I would say the key challenge for us has been sourcing good training that's relevant in English language. That's not easy, right? The second thing is, and maybe more importantly, there's a significant administration burden attached to each mobility. That's the truth of it. Getting the application in is a piece of work, but when you manage each mobility, you have to know there's a paper trail and there's a financial trail and there's an audit trail. And if I didn't have a colleague in finance who did most of that financial piece, it wouldn't be happening. So most of the coordination work falls to me and most of the finance work falls to her. And like without that, it wouldn't happen. So there is definitely an issue, not so much an issue, that you have to be realistic about the workload involved, but I think it's worth it. And the last thing is, we've only had staff and tutors involved so far, and we've never had learners involved. But that's where we need to go next. We'd love to include learners a little bit in this process. So we haven't done that. I don't know how we will do it really. So it feels like another new step, but it feels like an important next step. And it feels like a really important opportunity. So lastly, in terms of 3 tips, I would say 1, start small, like a small little program. We'd say a couple of mobilities for training, and maybe even maybe job shadowing, maybe 1, maybe. or maybe not. We didn't have job shadowing at all for a couple of years. So a couple of training mobilities. And we found that's actually really helpful to send 2 people together, the same training, because it helps embed it when they come back. And it's a really good support to people as they travel. So the idea of sending, we said 2 people to a course A and 2 people to course B and 2 people to course C. Like even if you could send 6 people to 3 courses, like over a year and a half, that would be fantastic. The second thing is not to go in too big, obviously the first time, but the application is an application that takes a bit of time. So there's no point in applying for just 2 mobilities, right? You put in a day's work or more to write it. So if you're going to do that, you might as well get some benefit from it. So the question is how to scale the first application so that it's worthwhile. And that, but like I definitely think, you know, you could put in an application for 6 mobilities anyway, it'd be worth it. And the last thing to say is, like, the people in Lergus, like Gemma, I've always found them very, very friendly, professional and supportive, all of them. And they're always there to ask a question. And they also organize specific workshops on specific applications. So if you're going to apply for K1 or K2, there's usually a workshop in advance of the deadline to kind of get your head into that space. And like, they've been very helpful. So I would say there's money there, definitely, as Gemma says. It's a great opportunity, and if you start small, it'll lead you on the journey, and yeah, let it take you where it takes you, you know. So I hope that's helpful.
Very much so. Thanks so much for that, Jim. It's really good to have the perspective of organizations that are on the ground and delivering the projects. And I think it's also great that you were quite honest about like the challenges of the of Erasmus Plus and EU funding in general. It is challenging, it is tough, especially when you're getting started. But as you demonstrated, it unlocks so many opportunities for your organization and for your beneficiaries. So you're already thinking about where you can go next. And that's what's really great about these programs, is just kind of the sustainability it affords you and your staff and your community as well. So thanks so much for that, Jim. Great. So I think what we will do next is answer some questions from the audience. So we have a few here in the chat. So I might just address them to the most appropriate person, and then people can feel free to keep putting more questions in the chat, or if they want to come on mic, you're welcome to do that as well. But the first question that I see here is for Jim. So Jim, what program did you take on first? And how much time per week would someone need to set up and maintain?
I would start with the K1 definitely, and I would start with some training mobilities. That's the simplest and easiest thing. And the application is in February, I think, but like somebody like me would have to write that. So I always wrote the application. So there's a long narrative application that has to go in, and it's not the most straightforward. So like there's probably maybe 2 days work in total to get that in at least. But that's where I'd start, to be honest, a K1 training. And maybe put in a job shadowing, because if you have a year, if it's there for a year, you might find somebody, you might know somebody in Berlin or Germany that has that where you could visit, like, so that might be an option. That's where I would start. Yeah.
And then the following question to that is, what are the requirements for reporting? So for the K1s, what do you know? Maybe Gemma, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so for the K1 projects, they're generally not huge, big, complex projects. So there was just be reporting at the end. Each of your people who went away on a mobility, if they're staff, they'd need to fill in a short report themselves. They get a kind of an automatic email to tick some boxes and give us some insights. And then the organisational does a report at the end to kind of say what they completed and what they've achieved and what were the learning outcomes for the organisation, and a bit about how they've kind of implemented that learning into their organisation. The report form is very similar to the application form. So I always say to people, keep a copy of the application so you can say what were we going to do, and then you can say what did we do, and hopefully they're the same. And if they're not, you tell us why not, because none of them have been the same for the last 2 years of COVID. Everything went out the window. But yeah, so for the K1, it is a report at the end. For the Key Action 2 projects, those partnership projects, there's normally a report kind of halfway as well, just to let us know how things are going on, because they tend to be longer projects and they involve all these international partners. So it's just a chance for us to check in and see how things are going, and if you need any extra support at that point along the way.
Great, thanks for that. And then there's another question here. Who comes up with the themes? Is it all down to the organizations? I assume that means maybe the project idea.
I'll take that one. So
yeah.
this is for K2 now. This is where you have partnerships of European projects coming together. So what's crucial for that one is to make that happen is getting yourself to a contact seminar, a seminar where you're meeting other people, and they often will assemble people from different countries around a particular theme. So for example, like if you're interested in adult education in a rural context, like them, or like if that's the next contact seminar, and if you go to that, it means you're kind of interested in that topic, and maybe there'll be other people there as well. So then when you're there might be the opportunity to meet a few people and say, look, if we work together, maybe we could put something in. So you're kind of choosing a theme. So the context seminar will kind of give you a broad overview, and then you can kind of define a more specific theme within that. But like if you're interested in, for example, like we're interested in environmental adult education as a tool for fighting against climate change, right? So we'd like to do something in that, but in reality, if we wanted to put in an application for that, we'd have to find 2 or 3 other partners that would be interested in that as well, and that's not easy, right? We possibly could do it now, but if you're starting off, it's very hard to do it if you don't know partners. And the other thing as well to say is that with the K2, one of the groups has to be the coordinator. And I know Gemma can say more about this, but more work falls to the coordinating group than the others. So in the beginning, we were absolutely insistent that we could not possibly coordinate. So we were only willing to participate in the KA2 if some other group would actually do the coordination. Right, so that's the better place to start. It's only in the last year that we've actually coordinated, and it is a big step up in terms of responsibility and activity, you know. So if you're involved in a K2, I would say the ideal thing is to try to get yourself to a contact seminar and try to find some really good groups that you think you could work with, good people, because that's the key to it, and then avoid being a coordinator the first time.
Great. That's definitely valuable advice, Jim. And I think that in Access Europe, that's normally what we say to people that their first time going for EU funding is to be a co-applicant and not be the lead applicant. So you can learn from the lead applicant's mistakes. Okay, here's a good one. Can you partner with other organizations in Ireland as well as, or instead of organizations in other countries? Gemma, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, so for those partnership projects, you must have at least one other partner from one other country for the small scale, or 2 for the large scale ones, which you can also have an Irish partner, but they would be additional to the minimum. So for a small scale partnership, you could partner with another 1 or 2 Irish organizations, but you need at least 1 international one. The whole point of it is this is European Commission money, so it all is about European integration. But yeah, we do see that, and actually, as Jim was saying, sometimes there can be a little bit of that extra administrative burden on the applicant and the kind of lead organization. So if you have another organization that's just down the road and speaks the same language as you, that might be nice backup for you to have a second Irish organization as part of that partnership that might give you a hand with some of the practical stuff in between your international partner traveling events as well.
Great. Have the courses or the training, do they need to be designed for the application?
No, so there's flexibility there. We do ask you to list kind of 1 potential place you might go, and that's just to give us a gist of the type of training you're looking for, but that can change afterwards. So really all you're looking for at application stage is a sense of how many people you're wanting to send and where. The one thing that people sometimes get caught up on is, well, say you said you were sending someone to France, which is quite nearby, and actually then you end up sending someone to Turkey. You've applied for the lower travel rate and you're now traveling further, so you could lose out on a few bob there. So it can be handy to know the general area that you're heading to, but you know, it can also work the other way. You could apply for sending someone to Eastern Europe and you could end up sending someone to Belgium. So it's kind of, if you can have a gist of where you might be going, but there is flexibility afterwards to change that if you find a better course or something more suitable along the way. Sometimes people go to the first course and then they make really good contacts at that one and they hear from somebody, oh, well, I went to this one in this place, and you know, it all starts to connect. So that's absolutely fine, but it's more just about giving us the gist of how many staff you want to send and the kinds of topics they would be hoping to learn about. I can jump on from that because I see another question there about a list of reviewed training courses. We unfortunately don't have that, and it's something I would nearly love to have. I suppose the issue is we can't really promote one training course over another because there's so many across Europe. But certainly, you know, we've kind of starting to build up a list of where people have gone before, and we could certainly put you in contact with current projects and that kind of thing. There is also some places that you can look at online. So the IPALE platform is an online platform. It stands for the Electronic Platform for Adult Learning in Europe. And you'll often find course providers will advertise there, or equally people will talk about good courses they were on and things like that. There's also, they've recently updated that online platform to have a really good partner finding tool with it built into it. So that can be a place if you're looking for someone to job shadow with, or for a Key Action 2 project. That's a lot more flexible now than it used to be, that you can put in the kind of themes and topics you're interested in, or the types of countries you're interested in. There's lots of different filters for searching there, or even just for posting your own ideas and let people come to you. So that has recently been really overhauled. So hopefully now it's a lot more useful than it used to be. I'll stick a link for that one into the chat.
Great. What else do we have here? How do we find out about the contact seminars that Jim mentioned?
Yeah, so the contact seminars are fabulous. A lot of them kind of slowed down with COVID, and they're only just starting to pick back up again now, which is unfortunate. Here in Ireland, we're running lots of them, but that's no good to you guys who want to go abroad to them. But certainly we advertise anything that comes up. There is one coming up in January in, I'm gone blank on the country, it's Scandinavia, it's either Norway or Finland. It's about the power of non-formal education. That's a really interesting one. I'll give you the link for that, Emily. You can go out in the email afterwards.
Yep.
And they come up kind of from time to time. We tend to put them into our newsletter. They're on our social media, things like that. They're often very short notice. And this is just down, we've no control over this. This is down to our colleagues in the other national agencies around Europe, that they suddenly announce that they have this amazing event on, but it's on in a foreign country in 6 weeks' time. And so sometimes it is just about being on our mailing list, or, you know, drop me a line and say, Gemma, here are the things that I'm interested in, so I can maybe ping you directly when I get one of these last minute invitations. I think it's just kind of a hangover from COVID, that previously they would have been all scheduled out for months in advance. And organizations are only just starting to run these kind of things again now.
Great, thanks for that, Gemma. Good question from Neve Healy for Gemma. So, not sure our organization fits Erasmus Plus. Is there anyone in Lergus we could talk to about the possibility of this or other funding? I don't know, Neve, do you want to come on mic and explain a bit about your organization and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm with QuidU, so it's a parenting organization, it's a charity. And, you know, most of our core activities is just parent-to-parent support. We've no paid staff, all volunteers. But we have a couple of specialised sectors, and I'm in one of the specialised sectors. So I'm a tutor on the antenatal teacher training programme, and we train up antenatal educators to run classes in the community. Now, because of not having any funding at all, we have to charge our students for their training, and then they have to charge, so their classes are private classes. But I'm just wondering, is there any opportunity for funding that would enable us to run free classes in the community, so, you know, that we'd be able to take on more people to train, that they wouldn't have to pay to train with us, and then they would be able to provide, that we'd be able to get funding to be able to run classes.
We can have a chat again afterwards, Neve. We certainly wouldn't be able to fund the classes that are happening in the locality, because, as I said, all these projects are all about that kind of European connection and partnership and stuff, but there might be some scope there to support the training of your tutors, to get them to go off on courses abroad or to upskill, something like that, that might at least take a bit of the burden off you. So yeah, you can get my details after this and we'll have a chat and we'll tease it out a bit more.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, sorry, just looking in the chat box here. And then there's a question from Claire from Liberties Weavers, a voluntary group. We'd love to go to the Nordic countries, so they have a huge craft school network. Would KA1 be an avenue for a voluntary group?
Yes, absolutely, Claire, and I'm glad you showed up. I think we were emailing during the week, so thank you for coming. That's great. But yeah, I think that would be really interesting. And I think certainly a KA1 to go and do some kind of job shadowing or some sharing with people there, and the potential for a partnership project in the longer term if you had something bigger in mind. But I think a Key Action 1 project and go and visit some of those countries would be a really great start for you. Yeah.
Great.
Now, again, I know you mentioned secondary schools there, so this would be focused on the adult education side of it and the work that you do with adults. It is a funny one because I know a lot of you here probably work across a few different sectors and a few different age groups and things, and that does happen in the voluntary sector. In that scenario, you kind of need to do separate applications, which is really unfortunate. You know, if you're working with young people and you're working with adults, you're then looking at an adult education application and a youth application, or those kind of things. Again, this is coming down from the European Commission. They're very separate boxes with very separate pots of money, and that's the way it works. But we're always happy to have chats. And sometimes, I mean, I was doing this even yesterday for today's deadline with somebody where myself and a youth colleague came on a call together to tease out this project and make sure they were applying in the right sector. So we're always happy to support with that.
Perfect. I think that's it from the chat box. Is there anybody in the audience that has a question that they want to come on mic to ask?
I would just a quick thing. I'm in the KDYS, so Kerry Diocesan Youth Service. I'm actually the youth club support worker for all the youth clubs that are around Kerry. So I'm responsible for training all the volunteers as well as junior leaders and making sure that they do youth participation and all that. So I suppose I have over 300 volunteers and over 1,000 young people to kind of keep an eye on. But I was just thinking, because I was only told to go on this or whatnot, but I suppose it'd be kind of, I'm thinking as well, like, would it be possible to do something for the volunteers themselves? They'd be adults, like they're over the age of 18, who supervise on a Friday night. So would it be kind of something that we could do for them as well, to maybe get them to go to some other kind of maybe club that's over in Europe or something like that, to kind of work with other leaders? I don't know, I'm trying to tease it out my own way.
Absolutely, Mary. I think you're probably going to fit in the youth field rather than the adult education field, but it depends really on the content of the activity you wanted to do. So if they were going to do job shadowing to help them be better leaders in the youth groups, then it would be a youth worker mobility as such. Even though they're volunteers, they would still be considered youth workers.
Yes.
But I could put you in touch with my youth colleagues for that. If you wanted to do something that was just for them as adults, their own personal development, their own life skills, then it would be an adult education project. So it depends on the content of it. But if it's to try and kind of support them to be better youth workers or better leaders, then it would be a youth project. But it would be quite similar to the stuff I talked about earlier, in terms of they could go off on training courses and job shadowing and all kinds of different things like that. There's also, in terms of those kind of partner finding and contact making events, there's a lot more of them in the youth sector than there are in the adult education sector. So we can point you to those as well. So they're just free opportunities to send people off on events, which might be you know, a nice starting point for you as well, because there's no application for those. You just put in the name for the person. So we can point those in your direction as well, Mary.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Was there anything else, Emily, on the Menti that we didn't go back
Yeah,
to?
just to throw one out. So what I kind of gleaned from the Menti is, so we've got a lot of information today. People are very intrigued. What's the first step? What do they do next? How do they get started?
I guess the next steps are probably to come along to some more events that we have. So as Jim was saying earlier, we run a kind of a series of events as we lead up to a deadline. So we run a bunch of these kind of information events, just giving people the general information. And then we start running more kind of workshops where we actually try to help people to work through an application and to plan that. I'm on a mission, right? So for 2023, I've decided I want to get to every county in Ireland. So all of you guys can give me a hand with this, because what I need is places to go. So if you're sitting here and you're going, yes, this would be fabulous, I need a meeting room, and I need you to invite along a few of your neighbours and other organisations that we can come down and we can actually run these workshops with you. Because sometimes, you know, it takes an hour or two to tease out what are the objectives, what are the needs, how can this all match up? And that can be a lot easier to do when we're all in a room together. So we're, you know, we've been stuck in these little Zoom boxes for too long. So this is my mission for 2023. So if any of you want to invite me down, I'm more than happy to travel. But yeah, so come along to those kind of workshop events that we run. We do also run application clinics, which tend to be a bit closer to the application deadline. They have all my colleagues from the finance team. So I always say, don't go to those first because they might scare you off a little bit. But they do go through the kind of technicalities of the application form and the budget. They're kind of the sort of checklist to make sure you've got everything right before you hit submit. So they're kind of the steps that we have. We can also send on some more resources there. Everything that I'm telling you today all comes out of this big book that's called the Program Guide for Erasmus+. It is a beast of a book. It is 400 pages long. Poor Emily is shaking her head at me here. But you don't need to read 400 pages. You need to read maybe 12, and I'll tell you which 12 to read. So yeah, that can be the kind of a good step to download that, and that gives you the breakdown of exactly how many days you can go and how much money you get for all the different countries, and all of that kind of technical stuff is all there. So that's worth a look as well. But yeah, I think the next thing is just to sort of get in touch, get on our mailing list, and we can start getting all these other kind of workshops and the next steps set up that we can think it through. But also, I suppose, just have a Google, have a look about, well, what kind of training courses might I be interested in? What are have those conversations at your staff meetings of, if we were to do this, what kind of things do people want upskilling on? So just to start those conversations internally, that you can kind of figure out, well, what is it that we're looking for? I see a question there. Are we on the mailing list now? I presume, Emily, you're going to share.
Yeah, so what we'll do, we're going to send the follow-up email, and what we can do is send the link to a Largus Eventbrite page, which is where you do register for the workshops, and we can also share the link for the Largus mailing list newsletter as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
Great. So when would we know if the application was successful? Okay, so just a question around application timelines. So Gemma, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so there is a little bit of a time delay there, just because we're a small team and we get a lot of applications. So if you apply in February, you would probably hear in April. You'd probably be signing a contract in May to potentially start the project in June. For the accreditation, it tends to take us a little bit longer. So the people that applied for the accreditation deadline that's just passed, they won't hear until January. But that's just because that's a longer process. But yeah, we will always kind of tell you that at those application clinics so that you have a sense of that and you're not sitting twitching waiting for an email, but it is normally about 2 months.
Great. Any other questions? Yep, Haley, we'll include you in the follow-up email.
How are people feeling at this stage? Are you feeling like this might be a possibility for you? Lots of nods. Okay, good.
Great. We've got an excited and yes, definitely. It's encouraging. Okay, so I think if there are no other questions, what we can do now is just sort of wrap up with the supports from Largus and some of the supports from Access Europe. Does that sound all right to you, Gemma?
Yeah, great.
Do you want to go ahead and share your slides?
Yeah, I can do. I guess I've probably almost covered it.
Or
now.
do you need to? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't need to share again. So yeah, so basically I'll send out the link to sign up to our newsletter and our various social media accounts. I'm on Twitter specifically with an adult Twitter. I'm Gemma_Largus. So just keep in touch with us. As I said, sometimes those international events can be kind of last minute, but all of our own national workshops and stuff, we would always plan a good few weeks in advance and we'll share those with you. And then I suppose the other piece is just to come back to me if you think you might be interested in hosting a workshop. If there's a few organizations in your area, we would absolutely be delighted to do that, because I think, you know, we're not expecting everyone to travel to Dublin all the time, and some of us are a little bit sick of Zoom meetings, so we're really happy to kind of get out and get around the country. And yeah, I'll send you on the links for all those different bits and pieces, but absolutely you'll have my contact details. And you know, never feel bad about sending me an email. This is literally my job, is to try and support you through this. We know that these things are a little bit more bureaucratic than we would like them to be, and some of the language can be a bit heavy. So that is my job, and I'm always happy to take a phone call or answer an email. So yeah, keep in touch.
Thanks, Gemma. So what I'll do now is just wrap up by sharing a bit about Access Europe and what we do and the supports that we can offer you guys, just so you get a sense of who we are and why we are delivering this training today. And I don't want to start from there. Oh, Sorry. Try that again. It's probably very obvious that I have been on holidays for a while and can't remember how to share anything. And just give me a moment. Okay. So Access Europe. So who are we? So we are a specific program within the wheel to help organizations access European funding. And so this is myself and Christina and my manager, Emma. So that's our team. Our contact details are here. And again, we will circulate those in the follow-up email that we send. But essentially what we do is we provide updates on all the different EU funding programs and their deadlines. So that includes Erasmus Plus and other programs like Creative Europe, the Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values programs, other programs that you might not be aware of. So we trawl through all the different funding deadlines and make sure that you are aware of the deadlines that are applicable to you as a civil society organization. And we put those in a free monthly newsletter that we send out every month. And so we also run training and events like the event that we're running here today, but we also have a whole series on all the different kind of EU funding programs that are out there, how you can get started designing your EU project, how you can build an EU project partnership, tips to find project partners across Europe, and just kind of manage your project as well once you do get that funding. And so the other thing that we do that it might be of interest to people just based on the questions that came up in the Menti is we have a partner database. So you can create an organizational profile on our EU partner database, and we then promote that database throughout Europe so that partners will come to you and contact you about joining their projects and getting together for other kind of EU networking opportunities. So we'll include a link to the partner database in the follow-up email as well. We'll include a link to our YouTube channel so you can take a look at all the other kind of trainings that we offer and see if anything like that is of interest to you. There'll also be a link to our newsletter so you can sign up for that and stay abreast of all the different EU funding opportunities that are out there. So that's it from me. So just on behalf of the Wheel, thanks so much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll be hearing from you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks so much.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.